Inside San Quentin death row, America's most notorious final stop. The scream tore through East Block at 3:12 in the morning. It wasn't loud at first. It started low, broken like air being forced through damaged lungs. Then it rose, sharp, raw, desperate, echoing through concrete and steel. Men inside their cells sat up instantly. Some pressed their faces to the bars. Others stayed frozen, knowing better than to move. East Block was not supposed to sound like that. This was death row, a place built for waiting, not fighting. A place where men were locked away to die slowly by time, not quickly by another man's hand. Yet there was violence, blood, panic. Under flickering lights, guards ran down the narrow tier. Cell doors rattled as hands slammed against metal. Somewhere between the second and third level, a man lay on the concrete floor, his prison whites soaked dark. A sharpened piece of scrap metal rested nearby. Standing over him was another condemned inmate. His arms were thick with black and blue gangster tattoos, symbols of old loyalties, old wars. His chest rose and fell fast, eyes empty, face calm in a way that frightened everyone who saw it. This was San Quentin death row, America's most notorious final stop, and the silence had just been broken. The question now was simple and terrifying. If death row could no longer contain the worst men in the country, what came next? This channel is created for educational, documentary, and informational purposes only. All stories, events, and individuals discussed are based on public records, news reports, court documents, and documented sources from the United States, United Kingdom, and Canada. The content presented does not promote violence, crime, or illegal activity. Any opinions expressed are intended for analysis and commentary and should not be interpreted as factual accusations against any individual or institution. Some visuals, reconstructions, or narratives may be dramatized or simplified to enhance storytelling clarity while remaining faithful to the documented facts. Viewer discretion is advised, as this channel may contain disturbing themes related to crime, incarceration, and mental health. This channel does not provide legal, medical, or professional advice. All rights to referenced media belong to their respective owners, and no copyright infringement is intended. If this story opened your eyes, don't let it end here. Hit like so this video reaches more people who need to see the truth. Subscribe for real crime and prison documentaries you won't see on mainstream media. And comment below, do you think the justice system failed here, or did it get it right? Long before the scream, before the blood, every man here passed through the same iron gates. San Quentin State Prison sat on the edge of the bay, its walls heavy and gray, staring out at open water and freedom it would never touch. It was the oldest prison in California. For more than a century, it had carried out executions, hangings, gas chamber deaths, and later lethal injections. Hundreds of men ended their lives here. Then the execution stopped, but death row did not. Men kept arriving, shackled, silent, angry, broken, convicted of murders that shook communities across the United States. Some killed strangers. Some killed family. Some said they were innocent. The courts had spoken. Their lives were over. They just didn't know when. They were led inside East Block. 5 stories high. Cells stacked like cages in a tower. Narrow walkways. No real privacy. No real quiet. Each man assigned a cell barely big enough to stand, sit, and lie down. Metal bars. Concrete walls. A toilet inches from where they slept. This was home now. Days on death, row moved slowly. Meals slid through slots. Guards walked past with keys that never left their belts. Some inmates talked through the bars. Others stayed silent for years. Letters were written. Appeals were filed. Most went nowhere. The waiting changed men. One inmate, known inside as Knuckles because of the tattooed bones across his hands, said on his first night that the place felt like a coffin that never closed. His arms were covered in ink, names, numbers, symbols, reminders of a life already gone. The cells were cold. The walls leaked when it rained. Pigeons roost in broken areas of the building, leaving droppings that guards tried to clean but never fully could. Paint peeled. Pipes rattled. The smell never fully left. This was not just punishment. It was erosion. In the recreation yard, the condemned were allowed brief moments outside. A small concrete space. Barbed wire above. Guard towers watching every step. The sky was visible, but freedom was not. Tattoos told stories there. Gang markings. Prison symbols. Names crossed out. Time did not erase rivalries. It sharpened them. Old beefs followed men from county jails, from other prisons from decades earlier. That morning, whispers moved faster than footsteps. A man called Brick had problems. His tattoos ran across his chest and shoulders like armor. Word spread that he had crossed the wrong person. Some said the conflict started years ago in another facility. Others said it was recent. No one knew the full truth. But everyone felt it. Guards noticed it too. The yard was quieter than usual. Men avoided certain corners. Eyes tracked movement. Hands clenched and unclenched. By evening, cells were locked. Inside East Block, tension pressed against the walls. Knuckles sat on his bunk, staring through the bars. Brick paced his cell, breathing hard, tattoos shifting with every step. Then the lights dimmed. Then the scream came. And every man on San Quentin death row knew something irreversible had just happened. The alarms came seconds after the scream. Sharp, mechanical, echoing through East Block like a warning that could not be ignored. Red lights flashed along the tiers. Guards shouted orders that bounced off concrete and steel. Cell doors rattled as inmates slammed their fists, some yelling, some laughing, some silent and watching. The man on the floor was still alive when the guards reached him. Barely. Blood ran toward the drain in thin lines. His eyes were open, unfocused. His mouth moved as if trying to speak, but no sound came out. A guard pressed down hard on the wound, while another radioed for medical. The weapon was kicked away and pinned under a boot. The inmate with the tattoos did not resist. He stepped back, hands raised, face empty. Years on death row had taught him one thing. Resistance only made things worse. Shackles snapped around his wrists. He was pulled away as the injured man was lifted onto a stretcher. East Block fell into a strange silence after the chaos passed. Not peace, not calm, something heavier. Lockdown followed immediately. Every inmate was ordered to the back of his cell. Lights stayed on through the night. Guards walked the tiers in pairs, boots slow, eyes sharp. No one slept. Men replayed the sound of the scream over and over in their heads. By morning, the injured man was gone, taken to the prison hospital. No one knew if he would live. Rumors spread faster than truth. Some said the stab wound hit a lung. Others said it missed the heart by inches. A few whispered that this wasn't over. What happened was only the beginning. Knuckles sat on his bunk, staring at the wall. His tattooed hands shook slightly, though he tried to hide it. He had seen violence before. He had caused it. But this was different. Death row wasn't supposed to move like this. Here, time was the weapon. By midday, investigators arrived. Not outsiders, internal prison officials. They walked the tiers with clipboards, stopping at cells, asking questions no one wanted to answer. Most inmates stayed quiet. Snitching on death row carried consequences, even here. The man who stabbed had a name, but it wasn't spoken out loud. Guard called him by number now. He was moved to an isolation cell, smaller, darker, colder. 23 hours a day alone. No contact, no yard. But isolation didn't erase what he had done. In the days that followed, East Block changed. Guards tightened routines. Movement was restricted. Recreation was shortened. Meals were delayed. Every small comfort became smaller. Tension crawled along the tiers like a living thing. The injured man survived barely. That news hit death row quietly. No cheers. No relief. Survival meant more waiting. More pain. More unfinished business. Knuckles heard it through a guard's muttered comment. He leaned back against the wall, exhaled slowly. Survival meant the story wasn't done. At night, whispers traveled cell to cell. Some said the stabbing was personal. Others believed it was gang-ordered, a message sent even here. Tattoos that once meant history now meant danger. Men studied each other more carefully. Every look felt loaded. One evening, during the short yard time, Brick appeared again. He moved slower now. His chest tattoos peeked from his collar as he walked, guarded, eyes scanning. No one spoke to him. Space opened around him without words. Fear did that. Knuckles watched from the fence line. Something in Brick's posture was wrong. Not weak. Careful. Like a man who knew he was being watched by more than guards. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the concrete. Then Brick stopped walking. He looked up, not at another inmate, but toward the tower. A guard's hand tightened on his rifle. And in that moment, Knuckles realized the violence hadn't been random. It had been a warning, and someone else on death row was next. Brick kept his eyes on the tower longer than anyone else ever dared. The guard did not move. The rifle stayed pointed downward, not aimed, not relaxed. Just ready. Brick lowered his head and walked again, slow and measured, boots scraping concrete. Yard time ended minutes later. Whistles blew. Gates opened. Men shuffled back inside without speaking. Something had shifted. Back in East Block, doors slammed shut one by one. The sound echoed like a countdown. Knuckles sat on his bunk, replaying the moment in his mind. Brick's look hadn't been fear. It had been recognition. Someone knew something. That night, sleep didn't come easy. The lights stayed on low. Guard passed more often than before. Somewhere down the tier, a man cried quietly into his pillow until exhaustion won. By morning, Brick was gone. Not transferred. Not released. Removed. His cell stood open during count. Mattress stripped. Walls bare except for the outlines where photos and papers once hung. Guards avoided questions. Inmates noticed everything. Removed meant one thing on death row: protective housing, isolation, or worse. Knuckles pressed his tattooed hands against the bars and watched the empty space where Brick had been. The absence felt louder than a scream. Days passed. Routine returned on the surface. Meals. Count. Short yard time. But underneath, tension brewed. The stabbing had cracked something open. Old lines blurred. New fears replaced old ones. Whispers spread that the stabbing was tied to something bigger than a personal feud. That someone had talked. That information had moved from cell to cell, and the wrong ears heard it. One night, during shower rotation, Knuckles heard a voice from the next tier. Low. Careful. Keep your head down. He didn't recognize the speaker. That made it worse. Knuckles nodded once, even though no one could see him clearly. His chest tightened. Warnings on death row were never free. The guard changed too. They searched cells more often. Mattresses were flipped. Legal papers were checked page by page. Even tattoos were studied. Arms, necks, chests, symbols photographed, meanings logged. Gang lines mattered here. They always had. San Quentin held men from across the state, from rival streets, rival prisons, rival lives. Death row didn't erase that. It compressed it. One afternoon, Knuckles was escorted to a small interview room. No windows, just a table bolted to the floor. A camera in the corner. Two officials sat across from him. They asked about Brick. They asked about the stabbing. They asked about tattoos. Knuckles answered carefully. Too much truth could kill you. Too many lies could do the same. He kept his eyes down, voice steady. When they let him leave, his legs felt weak. That night, Brick returned. Not to his old cell. He was placed 2 tiers above Knuckles, visible only through layers of bars and shadow. His face looked thinner. His tattoos stood out more against pale skin. Isolation had already started to hollow him. Brick didn't look at anyone, but someone looked at him. From the far end of the tier, a man with faded ink across his neck watched Brick settle in. His tattoos were old school, prison-made, the kind that carried weight. He said nothing. He didn't need to. Knuckles felt it in his gut. Brick had been removed to protect him, or to expose him. Either way, death row was rearranging itself, and the next move would not come from the inmates. The pressure arrived quietly. No announcement, no warning, just small changes that added up fast. Yard time cut shorter. Showers delayed. Mail slowed down. Guards spoke less, watched more. The building itself felt tighter, like it was shrinking around the men inside. Knuckles felt it in his chest before he could name it. Brick stayed silent on the upper tier. He didn't pace anymore. He didn't talk through the bars. He sat on his bunk for hours, staring at nothing, tattooed arms resting on his knees. Isolation had stripped something from him. Whatever fire he once carried was buried deep. but eyes never left him. The older inmate with the faded neck ink kept watching. So did others. Death row ran on observation. Weakness didn't need to be announced. It was sensed. One morning, during count, a guard stopped in front of Knuckles' cell longer than usual. His eyes moved slowly over Knuckles' arms, reading the tattoos like a map. "You good?" the guard asked. Knuckles nodded. The guard didn't move for another second. Then he walked on. That single moment said everything. The institution knew the tension was real, and it wasn't done tightening the screws. Later that day, Brick was taken again. This time, it wasn't quiet. Guards arrived with restraints, body armor, radios buzzing. Orders were short. Brick didn't resist. Shackles clanked as he was moved down the tier, past faces that pretended not to watch. He disappeared behind a steel door near the end of East Block, a place meant for separation, not safety. The rumors came fast. Some said Brick had given information. Others said he was about to. A few whispered that he'd been set up, moved where someone could reach him without witnesses. Knuckles didn't believe in coincidences anymore. That night, the tier stayed awake. No voices, no banging, just listening. Sometime after midnight, a sound cut through the stillness. Not a scream, a thud, then another. Metal against metal. A door rattling hard. Guards ran. Lights snapped on full. Boots thundered down the walkway. Commands echoed. Somewhere near the separation unit, voices rose, sharp, urgent, angry. Then silence. Again. By morning, one cell in East Block was sealed off with yellow tape. Guards stood posted, faces tight. An inmate had been removed under a sheet. It wasn't Brick. That fact alone made it worse. The dead man had tattoos too. Heavy ink across his arms, chest, and throat. Gang symbols that meant something to the wrong people. His body told a story long before his mouth ever did. The official word came down fast. Medical emergency. Ongoing investigation. No further information. But Death Row didn't need official statements. The message was clear. Someone had acted while the guards were distracted. Someone had reached across lines that weren't supposed to be crossed. And someone else was now exposed. Brick was returned to his cell late that evening. His hands shook when the restraints were removed. He didn't look up. He didn't speak. Knuckles watched from below as Brick sat on his bunk, head in his hands, tattoos dark against pale skin. Brick wasn't protected. He was bait, and whoever had taken the first life was still inside East Block. The next morning, East Block felt smaller than ever. The air was heavier. Silence sat in corners, watching, listening. Guards moved faster, but spoke less. Inmates whispered, but only when no one could hear. Tattooed arms flexed nervously against bars. Neck tattoos twitched with tension. Every mark, every symbol, had meaning, and someone knew them all. Brick did not move. He sat on his bunk, hands folded over the fresh scars of restraints, head bent. His chest tattoos caught the first light of the morning sun, ink shining against pale skin. He did not look at anyone, but everyone looked at him. Knuckles paced his cell quietly. He had seen what the day before could do. Death, removal, isolation. Each event stretched fear further across the tier. And now, the whispers told of something worse, that someone had an eye on him, that someone had their plans ready. At breakfast, the inmates filed through the mess hall slowly. Tray after tray of bland food. Silence stretched with each step. Then a loud crash, metal against metal, echoed from the far corner. Heads snapped toward the noise. An inmate fell. Another pushed past. Chaos flared for a second. Guards rushed in, hands gripping batons and radios. The fallen man had a tattooed arm reaching out, clenching nothing, eyes wide. He was alive but shaking, trembling with a fear Knuckles could almost taste. By afternoon, rumors had hardened into certainty. Someone had crossed the line again. Someone had acted from the shadows. And the men with the most power inside East Block were no longer who everyone thought. Knuckles saw it in the subtle glances, in the shifts of posture, in the way Brick no longer made eye contact with anyone, even those he once respected. He was isolated in a new, invisible way. Not by walls, by fear. Then it happened. The phone in the guard office rang. Short, sharp. Guards looked at each other, radios crackling. A head guard sprinted down the corridor. Orders came fast, too fast for anyone to process. Knuckles felt the walls closing. He didn't understand yet, but instinct said danger. Not personal, not random, systemic. A few minutes later, Brick screamed. Not the short, sharp scream of panic. Not the raw cry from a fight. This was a long, ragged wail that twisted through the corridors and up the tiers. Men froze. Guards sprinted. Every cell door rattled. Knuckles pressed his hand against the bars, eyes wide. The scream didn't stop. The lights flickered. Shadows danced across tattooed arms, across concrete floors, across faces and cells. Every step, every echo magnified the chaos. When the guards finally reached Brick's cell, the door was empty. No mattress, no blankets, no sound but the echo of the last scream fading into metal walls. Knuckles stepped back, heart pounding. He wasn't supposed to know what happened next. No one was. The tier went silent. Not calm, not peace, just waiting. Because now everyone understood the truth. Death row was not a place to die quietly. It was a place where even the condemned could vanish. Even the strongest men, marked by tattoos, hardened by years of prison, could be exposed, isolated, and hunted inside walls no one else could enter. And for the first time, every man on East Block understood that no one, not even Brick, was safe.